Okay, everybody, thank you very much for joining us tonight for the Limud of Parashat Shavua, Parashat Noach. Before we begin, I would like to thank our host, Mr. and Mrs. Ben Gadzi, for hosting us tonight. And thank you for the beautiful spread. It's very kind of you.
Thank you so much.
And may Hashem bless your home with lots of good things, with simcha, with happiness, shalom bayit, bracha, parnasa, health. Hashem. Thank you for having us. So we're here tonight to learn Parashat Noach, and tells us in the Torah that Noach ish tzaddik, tamim haya b'dorotav. He was a righteous man. He was complete in his generations. Et ha'elokim hitalech Noach. Noach walked with Hashem. These are very great accolades that are given to Noach. Now, Noach is compared to the rest of his generation. His generation, the Torah tells us, "Vatishafet ha'aretz lifnei Elokim." It was destroyed before Hashem, and "Vatimale ha'aretz Hamas," and the land was filled with Hamas. Now, it doesn't mean Hamas, the terrorist group, but it's very similar. Hamas over here refers to stealing, says Rashi. That means that people were involved in acts of stealing, not only stealing monetarily, but also stealing each other's spouses, for example, immorality. Tremendous acts of stealing in many different directions, God forbid. Even in Hashem Yishmor, all kinds of immorality in very bad ways that were taking place. It does say, however, that the act of stealing was what sealed the fate of the Dor HaMabul, of the generation of the flood. In other words, all the immorality that took place, it was very bad. The different types of acts that people were doing, it was so bad that it says that even the animals started mating with not their partners. In other words, you'd have a zebra and a donkey instead of a zebra with a zebra. And they'd have all kinds of types of things like that, because when humanity goes down, humanity brings down the rest of the creation together with it. So therefore, everything started to go down. And Hashem was still willing to tolerate it. But then when the act of stealing was so rampant, that people were taking from each other and just destroying one another monetarily, at that point, Hashem said, okay, enough is enough, and the world has to go. But there was this one fellow, Noach ish tzaddik tamim haya b'dorotav. So there are a few things that are mentioned over here. Number one, Noach ish. Noach was a mensch. He was a man. The first thing, he wasn't like an animal. That's the first thing. People overlook that word sometimes. Noach ish, he's a man. He was an upright man. But not only that, but he's tzaddik. He did not fall into the different types of things that people were doing. Tamim haya b'dorotav, he was complete in his generations. Okay, so far so good. The question that the Mefarshim struggle with is, we find elsewhere, Pasuk in Tehillim tells us, Im navar titabar ve'im ikesh titapal, which means that a person is allowed, when somebody has a fellow that he's dealing with that is crooked, that is acting in a wrong way, in order to do what is right, you're also allowed to make use of tricks in order to do what is right in the eyes of Hashem. So, for example, the story with Yaakov Avinu and his marriage to Rachel, where Rachel understood that her sister Leah was going to be replacing her under the chuppah, and that was the plan of Lavan, the trickster, Lavan Haramai. And she informs Yaakov Avinu, she says, hey, this is not going to work out. She is going to replace me under the chuppah. This is going to be a big problem, right? And Yaakov says, don't worry. Achiv ani beramaut. I can be just as tricky as your father. And she said, the Gemara tells us in Masechet Megillah, she said, wait a minute, is that allowed? Is that okay? You're allowed to also be tricky? So he quotes this pasuk in Tehillim. He says, Im navar titabar v'mikesh patal. When you have somebody that's tricky like that, that's trying to be a charlatan, to take away from you, you're allowed to work right back at him and do exactly what's needed in order to do what is correct. So they come up with the plan, the famous plan of the Simanim. They come up with this idea that she's going to tell him under the chuppah 3 code words. What were the 3 code words? Who remembers? Rashi Tevot Chana. The 3 mitzvot that a woman is obligated to do that are designated for, men have to do it too, but women were the ones who were given the task. Chana stands for Chala, Nida, and Hadlakat Haner, right? So those were the simanim, the code words. And he said, I'm going to ask you under the chuppah for the code words. If you don't tell me them, it's obviously not you. And Rachel then had to make the decision of whether or not to give over the code words to her sister. And she did in order to save her from shame and embarrassment. And that zechut stands for us until this very day. The mercy that she had on her sister. But the point is that Yaakov employed a method of trickery, not because he was a tricky person and tried to cheat people, but because when you're dealing with such people, doesn't it make sense that you employ methods, again, not to do bad, but to save yourself from their trickery. So the Torah specifically says, Noach ish tzadik tamim haya bedorotav. He didn't do that. He didn't do, even that he didn't do. So the question is, why doesn't he use the Yaakov Avinu method? Very interesting. Again, one of the most beautiful things about going through the Torah every year is that every single year, when you start to learn the Torah, the Chumash, all over again, you learn things that you never knew. And this is a question that I'm seeing for the first time this year. So interesting to see an answer. I saw a beautiful answer from Rabbi Freundlich in a sefer called Lelamedcha. He quotes an answer from Khatam Sofer, and he explains it with a story. The story that he says is that there was this fellow, his name was Reb Sender. He was a very wealthy man in Europe. Reb Sender was known that he was extremely, extremely wealthy, and he was looking to make a shidduch for his daughter. And he was looking, and everybody that they offered this girl, she said no to. She said no to him, she said no to him. She wasn't interested. And she was getting more and more sad and depressed as time went on, and she was having a hard time. So he said, I don't understand. What is it? Why are you saying no to the best of the best guys? And the daughter said, listen, I hear you have all these people, but I'm sorry. My mind and my heart is set on this one guy. Shlomo Chaim. Which Shlomo Chaim? Shlomo Chaim, he's the one. What do you mean? Who is that? Shlomo Chaim, he's the son of Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon, Shlomo Chaim, what? Who was Reb Shimon? Reb Shimon, you know that guy that goes around knocking on doors begging? His son, Shlomo Chaim, that's the one I want to marry. So he says, what? Are you kidding me? Don't you know that it doesn't work out? We are of a certain, type of, family, and they're not. And don't you see that it's not a match, right? So she said, that's the only one I want to date. That's the only one I want to marry. And he says, okay, I guess if she's going to be depressed, what do? I have no choice. So he goes to Getzel, the Shadchan. Getzel is the one that's going to make the match. And he says to Getzel, do me a favor, go ahead and make this match for my daughter and Shlomo Chaim, the son of Reb Shimon the beggar. So he goes and he tries to make it happen. Shlomo Chaim, Reb Shimon the father, says, listen, I hear the idea, but I don't think it's for me. He says, why not? Don't you know who this man is? He says, yes, but I see this happening. They're going to get into a fight. And then she's going to say to him, who are you anyway? You're the son of Reb Shimon, the beggar. I don't need my son going through anything like that. Forget about it. So he goes back and he tells this fellow, Reb Sender, listen, I'm sorry, but he's not interested. He said, tell him we're going to shower him with everything he needs. He's going to be fine. He's going to be this and everything's going to be good. And he goes back to the guy, Reb Shimon, and he says, listen, I'm not interested. He says, please, you don't understand. We have to, because you have to understand, Shadchanim, they make a nice, payday on such a shidduch. You know what it says? Shadchan stands for Shofech Damim Kesef Notel. He spills your blood, takes your money. Don't tell Dinya that I said that. But anyway, sometimes you got to be careful. At any rate, he said, listen, you want me to send my son to date this girl? One condition. For 1 year, this Reb Sender has to come around town with me and knock on doors begging. If he's willing to do that, no problem. So he said, okay, how am I going to say that to this rich man? He doesn't say anything. He doesn't respond. He doesn't go. A couple of weeks later, the father of the girl says, hey, what happened? What happened with the shidduch? He says, you don't want to know. He says, what happened? He says that he's only going to let his son date your daughter if you go around houses in town begging for an entire year with him, together with him side by side. He says, what? That's what he said? That's what he thinks of me? And he got so mad and so frustrated. Meanwhile, the daughter was getting more and more and more and more depressed, and she had no way out until he finally agreed to do it. They go around the neighborhood for an entire year. They go knocking house to house, door to door. This guy is completely ashamed. He's shattered. He's broken. He's knocking on doors. What won't he do for his daughter? And he's doing it so that eventually his daughter should have a shidduch with this boy that she wants to marry. They're going around 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Eventually, it's about to be an entire year later that they've been knocking on doors. And then the father of the Chatan, the Reb Shimon, he says, listen, it's about a year later. Let's go make the shidduch like I promised. You've been walking around door to door with me. Now let's go do it. So all of a sudden, this Reb Sender says, wait a second. There's a shul here. There must be 30, 40 people here. We could hit up this shul, 30, 40 people giving us tzedakah. What are you doing? We're not going to go right now. We have the shul to go to. But he says, wait a minute. I want to make the shidduch now. You've been doing this for the shidduch, right? No, there's a shul. We'll do it. Take care of it. 30, 40 people in the shul over here. Mincha, let's go. So what's the idea? Says the Khatam Sofer, a person that gets involved with certain types of behavior, it's one thing if it's temporary. It's one thing if it's for a short period of time, like Yaakov Avinu. He knows he's going to Lavan for a certain amount of time. He's going back to his father Yitzchak. He's not going to stay there forever. It's just a small amount of time. Okay. But if you're getting entrenched in it, if you're getting deeper and deeper and deeper until it alters your mind and changes your perspective on life, and it becomes a part of you, that you cannot do. That's dangerous. That's the difference between why Yaakov Avinu was able to employ certain methods that were tricky as well, because he knew this was a temporary thing. He's not going to be doing this. Titen emet liYaakov. Yaakov only wants truth, emet. But he knew that he had to do certain things for a time being and then get out of there. Okay. But Noach started his life in a generation that was corrupted. And he's ending his life in a generation that's corrupted, almost, at least that's what he's thinking. So he did not allow himself to use any tactics other than pure, straight honesty, completely without any trickery, totally upfront, hiding nothing at any time. Only tzaddik tamim haya b'dorotav, because otherwise he would collapse, he would get crushed. Interesting answer from the Khatam Sofer. So the first thing that we, I think, can take from this is the idea that we too live, unfortunately, in a world that is very corrupted, morally, and so many things that are around us. And we also have to understand that we cannot employ methods in our either business or in how we conduct ourselves with people. We have to take the high road always. We have to take that method like Noach, to be ish tzaddik tamim, and not allow ourselves to have these outside influences infiltrate our behavior, especially with how we conduct ourselves monetarily, how we conduct ourselves in our interpersonal relationships, to be tzaddik tamim, just like Noach, because Noach was in that kind of generation, and I would venture to say that so too are we. Humble opinion. Okay, so that's the first point that I saw. Beautiful chidush from the Khatam Sofer on the parasha. The next thing that I wanted to share with you tonight is a very interesting idea. There is a very puzzling parasha at the end of Parashat Noach. I would say that this is probably the most confusing thing to read in the entire parasha. It's called the story of Migdal Bavel. Have you guys ever heard of the story of Migdal Bavel? Very interesting. I'm going to read it to you from inside. I'm going to translate it for you. And I think that if you just read the simple verses of the Torah, it's very hard to know what exactly is going on over here. Okay, so here's the end of the parasha. Aliyat Shevi. Vayhi kol haaretz safa echat udvarim achadim. The whole land was one language and one unified item. Dvarim achadim. Again, I'm saying words, hard to know what they mean. Vayhi benos'am mikedem. When they traveled east, vayimtze'u bika. Again, who are we talking about? But these people traveled east. They found a valley, be'eretz Shinar, in the land of Shinar, which we also know to be as Bavel. Vayeshvu sham, and they dwelt there. Vayomeru ish el re'ehu, and one man said to another, Hava nilbena levenim, let us burn bricks, v'nisrefa lisrefa, will make it burnt, vatihi lahem halevena le'aven, the bricks became stones, v'achema haya lahem lachomer, and they made cement, and that was their material. Vayomeru, and they said, Hava nivne lanu iru migdal, let's build for ourselves a city and a migdal, which means a tower. V'rosho b'shamayim, its head will go up to the heavens. V'naseh lanu shem, we'll make for ourselves a name. Pen nafutz al pnei kol haaretz, in case we get dispersed throughout the entire earth. V'yered Hashem lirot et ha'ir v'et ha'migdal asher banu. So Hashem came down to see the city and the tower that they built. Bnei Adam, the people of man. Vayomer Hashem hen am echad v'safa achat v'chulam. Hashem said, this is one nation and one language for all of them. V'zeh hachilam la'asot. This is what they started to do. Ve'ata lo yibatzer mehem kol asher yazmu la'asot. And now what they want to do will not stop. Hava nerda v'navla sham sifatam. Let's go down and confuse their language. Asher lo yishmu, thank you, ish sifat re'ehu, that nobody should understand what each one is saying. Vayafetz otam Hashem misham, and Hashem dispersed them from there, al pnei kol haaretz, throughout the entire earth, vayachdelu livnot ha'ir, and they stopped building the city. Abotai, have you heard this story before? Yes? Not a chidush to you. Okay, Baruch Hashem. To me, every time I read this little paragraph, it's a chidush, because I don't know what it means. It's a very hard thing to understand. You're reading something, and it doesn't really tell you much. It's very concealed. There's a lot here. You know there's a lot here. There's a message here. Obviously, the Torah wants us to learn something, but we don't really know what it's saying. So there are a number of explanations that have been given to what was the story with this Tower of Babel. Why was it such a problem? Why did Hashem disperse them? In other words, there's another very fundamental, basic question here. If what they were doing was so bad that the Torah had to tell us about it. And by the way, if you learn Masechet Sanhedrin, if you learn Tractate Sanhedrin, you'll see that the Dor HaHaflaga, this generation of the tower, they were considered to be epikorsim, which means that they were deniers of Hashem. According to some opinions, they don't have a portion in the world to come. So obviously what they're doing is extremely serious. Yet, their punishment was to be dispersed throughout the earth, whereas the generation of the flood, their punishment was instead to be destroyed. So if they're both epikorsim, there's a question here that we have to address, and that is, why is it so that this generation, they just got dispersed while the generation of the flood was destroyed? That's an interesting point to address as well. So, Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to talk about all of these things. So the first thing is to understand what indeed happened at this point in time. So the first explanation that I saw is based on the Midrash. The Midrash tells us that these people were upset about what had happened in the generation of the flood, even though they were descendants of Noach, and they decided to not let it happen again by doing one of two things. The first explanation is they built this huge tower, and at the top of the tower, they put an idol, a sculpture, right, that they would worship, and they put a sword in its hand. And the purpose was that this idol should do combat with Hashem. And the idol would win, and that would be the end of any kind of flood that would ever happen. That's the first explanation the Midrash says. Very interesting. Okay. The second explanation is that this people, they were so scared that they would be dispersed throughout the earth that they decided to build for themselves one community, one location, and one tower that they could all live in together as one unit, and they won't have to go anywhere. What's the problem with doing such a thing? When Hashem told Adam and Chava to be fruitful and multiply, he also said something else. He said, Peru urvu umil'u et haaretz. You have to fill up the earth. You cannot just be in one spot. You cannot just build and build and build and go up and up and up into the sky. You have to fill up the earth. And that was something Hashem did not like, and therefore Hashem had to scatter them throughout the earth. Interesting. But if we know that they were doing something that was considered to be epikorsut to a certain, again, it's very hard to see it in the psukim because it doesn't really say much in the psukim. But if we know that it was to the point that they were considered denying Hashem, so why didn't they get destroyed like the generation of the flood? It could be in a different method. Hashem promised he's not going to bring a flood again, but there are all kinds of methods Hashem could use to destroy this people. Why did he let them live? To this, Rabotai, I saw a fundamental idea, which I think is very important for us to understand, extremely important for us to understand, very applicable to our lives as well. And it goes as follows. The Midrash tells us, again, you have to answer a question by asking another question. So forgive me. The Midrash tells us an interesting phenomenon. The Midrash talks about the generation of King David. If you're interested in looking it up yourself, you can look it up in Bamidbar Rabbah 19:2. It says the following. King David's time was a time where there were people that were so knowledgeable in Torah that it says that even the little kids that were around in the time of King David could tell you 49 reasons why something should be viewed as pure and 49 reasons why something should be viewed as impure. They were on such a high level in their learning that they were able to really act like almost like a Sanhedrin, like the high court of Israel. That's how advanced they were. And it says that King David prayed for these children and young men to be safe and to be protected, and that Hashem should protect them in the zechut of their learning. Okay? It says, however, that when David HaMelech went out to war, on many occasions, he lost a lot of men. A lot of these boys that we're talking about now, who could tell you 49 ways to interpret it to be pure and 49 ways to be impure, they died. They died in battle. So the big question is, why? And then the Midrash goes on to say, you have a generation like King Achav, who spread idolatry throughout Israel in the worst ways. King Achav worshipped the Baal, which was an idol, and they did a lot of idolatry. So the question is, how come when King Achav went out to war, for most of the battles of his lifetime, they were successful? What's the difference between the two? And the Midrash explains one of the most incredible things. The Midrash explains that in King David's generation, there were what's called delaturin, which means people who speak lashon hara, people who are snitchers, people who squeal on others. And the Midrash brings down three very basic examples. For example, the city of Nov, the city of Kohanim, saw that King David was running away from King Shaul. As you know, there was a moment where King David was deemed by Shmuel as the king, and Shaul was demoted from being king. But Shaul didn't take that simply. He decided to chase after King David and kill him so that he shouldn't take over the kingdom. And he was running for his life because Shaul was trying to kill him. So he went to the city of Kohanim called Nov. And over there, they helped him. They gave him food. They gave him armor. They gave him even a weapon. They took care of King David. And there was one fellow that was there watching this. His name was Doeg HaEdomi. And Doeg HaEdomi saw them help David. Doeg lifted himself up and went to King Shaul and told them, Nov, the city of Kohanim, assisted your enemy. Shaul, without waiting too long, went and wiped out the entire Nov Ira Kohanim. He killed the entire city. So this one guy who saw what happened, how they helped him, decided to go and squeal on them, and by doing so, he got them all killed. That's called delaturin, people that speak lashon hara about others and try to gain for themselves and put down others. Achitophel was in David's generation. Who was Achitophel? Achitophel was actually the grandfather of Bathsheba, the wife of King David. Achitophel was an advisor to King David. He taught him certain things, and he gave very good advice. He was an advisor to the king. But Achitophel did not like the fact that David sent Uriah Hachiti to the front lines to be killed. That was the husband of his granddaughter, and he died. And then David married Bathsheba, right? Now it turns out that even though it wasn't considered to be a sin technically because of the fact that when he was with her, she was already not married retroactively, but Achitophel did not like that and thought that David was not allowed to be the king, and therefore he started to give him advice that was to his detriment. He started to take Avshalom, the son of David, and he got Avshalom to rebel against King David, his own son, and he starts helping Avshalom. Now here's the other crazy part. He's helping Avshalom rebel against his father. He wants Avshalom to die. So he wants Avshalom to kill David. He wants Avshalom to get killed. So who should become the king? Himself. Right? And he starts giving him all kinds of advice. He starts telling him, listen, I know you're tired, but you still shouldn't let go. Get yourself 12,000 men. Go wage war against everybody and get yourself killed, basically. That's why in modern Hebrew, when they say that somebody gave you bad advice, they call it atzat achitophel. Like the worst possible advice. It's for your detriment. It's for your downfall. So that was, again, a person that's trying to put you down and lift himself up. So there's no unity. There's no connection between people. They're not together with each other. Again, the Midrash says the Zifim. This was a people when David HaMelech had to run into the Pelishti territory, to the Philistines, and he was hiding out with the Philistines. There was a group of people called the Zifim that went to Shaul and said, Shaul, he's with us. He's hiding by us. Come and get him. Now's your chance. Again, people that are trying to bring down King David to lift up themselves. So because of the fact that there were these people in the generation of David, even though you had yeshiva boys that knew how to say 49 different explanations why this should be impure and 49 different explanations why this should be considered pure, that doesn't help when you have a generation of people that are at each other's necks and trying to bring each other down. And contrary to this, in the generation of Achav, we find that even though there was rampant idolatry, but people did not knock each other down. How do we know this? Izebel, the wife of King Achav, made it her business to go around and find any prophet of Hashem, a real prophet, and execute him. She killed and killed. She went on a murderous rampage of killing real prophets of Hashem. That's what she wanted to do. So there was one fellow, his name was Ovadia, and he was a prophet of Hashem. And he was able to still walk around in front of the world because he was a concealed prophet. But he hid, I believe it was 50 prophets of Hashem in a cave somewhere. And he supplied them with bread, and he supplied them with water, and he took care of them. And everybody knew about it. Everybody knew about it. As a matter of fact, Eliyahu HaNavi on Har Carmel, when he was going against the prophets of the Baal, he says, I'm the only prophet of Hashem left. Everybody knew that there were another 50 that were being hidden by Ovadia in a cave somewhere. But says the Midrash, not one person revealed to Izebel in that generation the deed that Ovadia was doing. Nobody went to Izebel and said, don't you know that Ovadia has these prophets in a cave and he's supplying them with food and water and taking care? Nobody said that. Nobody backstabbed him. They didn't backstab each other. They were helping each other. So Rabotai, says the Midrash, you want to know why David HaMelech, who had so many tzaddikim, why he lost in battle and why Achav won in battle? Because the people were united. By King Achav, the people were united. By King David, the people were not united. You guys following or no?
Yeah.
Yes? Anyone have any questions? You guys are awfully silent. What? No? So the people were united. That's the secret. So over here, says the Midrash, in another location, That's the answer to our question. Bereshit Rabbah 38:6 says, you want to know why it was so that these people that built the Tower of Babel, why did Hashem not destroy them? Why is it so that Hashem destroyed the generation of the flood and not them? Simple. The answer is because in the generation of the flood, what do we start off saying? They stole from each other. They took from each other. They ruined each other's lives. They were at each other's throats. They were backstabbers. They took each other and they destroyed one another. So Hashem said, that's the worst. Boom. Bye. Goodbye, entire generation. Flood. Not only no olam hazeh, no olam haba either. But when it comes to the generation of the Tower of Babel, that wasn't the case. They worked together. Right? What was the pasuk? Safa echad. They were one tongue, one language. Dvarim achadim. They had one mission. They travel together. They're trying to live as a community together. One tower for everybody together. Everything they're trying to do together. Now, it's true, they're taking an idol and putting it at the top and trying to wage war against God. It's not the best of things. It's epikorsut. It's a disaster if you want to know the truth, right? It's really not good. But Hashem is not flooding them. Why? Because what? Because ben adam lechavero, man to his fellow.
No, the Babel, ben adam lemakom.
I'm saying exactly. The Migdal Babel was a problem. Ben adam lemakom, but ben adam lechavero, they had unity. They had unity, and that Rabotai tells Hashem, okay, I'm not going to destroy them. Because they at the very least, have a single mission that they're working towards. To the point, by the way, where they even lost sight of their unity. Look at this. This is a very interesting detail that, again, I may have seen this in the past, but it came back to me this year. Amazing. Just look at this detail. They said, let's build us a city, a tower that the head of the tower is in the heavens, and we'll make for ourselves a name in case we get scattered throughout the whole earth. There's a Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer in chapter 24 that says something kind of scary, actually. It says that they built this tower so high up that they kept on climbing in like a circular motion, like a spiral staircase, upward and upward and upward.
They knew they were going to get dispersed in advance?
They were afraid of it.
Well,
They wanted to maintain that name.
How did they know?
That's a good question. I don't know. That's a good question. But again, it says that they built this spiral circular type of tower that you go up this way and you come down the opposite way. It's a very interesting thing how they built it. And then it says that if a person, imagine like the pictures of the when they were building the Empire State Building, you have these guys sitting on the beams, so many feet up, right? If a person would fall off of the building, off of the tower, they would just keep working because they were so involved in the mission of building this tower. They were so unified that they were unified to the point that no matter what, even if one of them died, okay, so he's dead. We still have the job to do. We still have to keep building it. But if a brick fell from the top and a brick would break, they would start crying and they would start bawling and they would say, how could we ever replace this brick? This brick was what was going to be a part of the tower. And they would start sobbing because the mission was so important to them that they even lost sight of the whole point, which was to be together and unified and everything. But it's just to explain to what degree this was the reality. At any rate, Rabotai, I think the message is extremely, extremely clear that unfortunately, when there isn't unity, you're at a weakness. And when there is, you have an incredible strength, even if it's around the wrong things. Now, does that fault King David? Is King David at fault for this? No, he was a person that had to do what he had to do. Doesn't mean that you stop doing what you need to do. But the reality is that there's no unity, and therefore that's a problem. And we have to admit to that. I remember, old enough to remember, 2 years ago, Simchat Torah, when it was the morning of Shmini Atzeret, and I remember coming in thinking that I'm going to give one speech, and then just totally going on to another speech after we heard about what was going on in Israel on October 7th. And I remember saying in Shul, Abutai, this is clearly because of the divide in the nation. This is clearly because of there was a whole thing about the judicial reform, and there were protests here and protests there, and the nation was never divided in such a way. And it turns out that after recovering military documents of Hamas, the military said clearly, Hamas chose this time to attack because they saw that the nation was divided. Rabotai, it's real. What we're learning in the Torah, it's eternal, but it's real. It's a real thing. When we are divided, we are weak. We are weak. And even if it's around the wrong thing, look, these were people that were epikorsim. They were trying to get against Hashem, but Hashem saw that they're together. It gave him nachat. It's a scary thing. It's a scary thing to realize. So obviously we have to do whatever we need in order to make shalom amongst ourselves first of all, but on a broader scale, with everybody else that we can. And that brings us strength. We just mentioned that everything is in the Torah. I'm going to share with you something now. Again, when you learn, you always see things you never saw before. I'm going to share with you a chidush from the Zohar Kadosh that I saw today for the first time. And it says the following. The Pasuk says that in the 600th year of Noach's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened. So the fountains that are in the earth are coming out from the ground, flooding the earth, and the windows of the heavens are open, pouring down rain on the earth, and that's how the flood comes about. I saw a statement from the Zohar Kadosh. Really, really interesting. If you want to look it up yourself, it's in the Zohar, Parashat Vayera, 3445. Take a look inside yourself. You'll see it's really amazing. It says the following. I'll read it to you inside. The Zohar says over here is a code. The dates that are being given here are actually a code for another period of history. Okay? Look at this. It says the following. When it says that in the 600th year of Noach's life, you want to know what it's talking about? It's Shit Me'ashinin, it's 600 years, Leshetita'ah, of the 6th millennia, meaning year 5,600. Says the Zohar, this pasuk over here that we're reading in our parasha is referring to the year 5,600. Just for reference, we are today in year what? 5,786. So the Zohar is talking already, Zohar is about 1,700 years old, at least from the time we discovered it. So the Zohar is telling us that you should know that when you read this parasha, there is a code over here. And it's talking about the year 5,600, which was 180 some odd year, 86 years ago. Okay. So you should know, says the Zohar, at that time, just like over here it says the fountains opened up from the bottom of the earth and the heavens opened up as well. Yitpatechun tar'eh de chokhmata. The gates of wisdom will open up le'ela, up above in Shamayim. Umabue de chokhmata, and the springs of wisdom will open up letata, from the earth. V'itatken alma, and the world will start becoming ready le'ala b'shevi'i, to enter into the last millennia, which is year 6,000. Meaning from 6,000 to 7,000.
86 years ago with the Holocaust.
I'm talking 186 years ago. 186 years ago.
Revolution?
Oh, very good. Very good. Now he says, Bashevi, this is going to be like the 7th day. Kebar nash de mitatken, like a person who's getting ready, biyoma shetita, on the 6th day of the week, Friday, michi arav shimsha le'ala b'shabta, so that he takes care of business before sunset to be ready for Shabbat. So he's talking about the year 5600, which was 186 years ago. So I looked it up. I was curious. What was discovered in that year? You know what was discovered in that year? I looked it up. You can look it up yourself. It was actually 1839. That's the way that they said it. So it's not 1840, which is exactly 186 years ago. 1839. It could be that it was the Hebrew year. I don't know. I have to look it up, to be honest with you. But at that time, Charles Goodyear discovered vulcanized rubber, which was the beginning of the tire. The tires are made of that stuff. An amazing thing. 1839 he discovered that. Yeah. What? Rabotai, I'm telling you, this stuff is pretty amazing. Right? Right? So Rabotai, Zohar Kadosh tells us these things, and it's all in the Torah, Rabotai. It's all in the Torah Kedusha. It's all here. The messages of the Torah, we have to remember every single parasha of the week is relevant to our time, is relevant to our lives as well. I'm going to share with you one more chidush, Rabotai. Interesting to know. Why is it so that when it came to Parashat Noach, all of a sudden, Noach and his members of his family are allowed to eat meat? Why? What? Why is it so? Almost done, guys. One last point. Why is it so that Noach and his family were allowed to eat meat after the story of the Teva?
Who said they shouldn't eat meat?
In the beginning, in Parashat Bereshit, they were told they're not allowed to eat meat. They're allowed to eat all the vegetables, all the fruits, everything that grows, but no meat.
But they had
Because
nothing
they are
else to
Isfahani, we don't eat our own produce.
do. They had
He's
nothing
telling.
else.
He was carrying them.
Esfahanis eat meat.
I know,
Yeah.
but not when we are a butcher or we have a restaurant.
All the time they ate meat, they lost all the, they used to live 900 years, 1,000 years, 800 years.
I hear. Okay.
Why?
I hear.
Because
But
Yeah.
it says, bring 2 of every kosher.
Oh, now we're talking. Now we're talking. So what's the idea?
So you could eat it.
Oh, very good. So that's what the Mepharshim say.
they had nothing
That
else to eat.
until that moment, until that time, they were not allowed to eat meat because they did
Because
not.
they couldn't produce it.
Because they did not have authority over the meat. Meaning, what I mean to say is, after Noach saved all the animals, so now because of that, they're entitled to eat the meat. Meaning, the whole reason that the animals are even here is because of humanity. So until that point, that wasn't the case. But now that that's the case, so therefore they are allowed to eat meat because the whole reason that the meat even exists is because of the fact that Noach took them in the
You're
Teva.
telling me before Mabul, they wouldn't have.
They were not allowed to. And they didn't do it.
And they live 1,000
Now, that's
years.
a nice
Now they
kiddush.
live
I don't know.
120 years.
What?
Fish.
They couldn't have fish either.
No fish
Oh, you're asking a good question. You're asking, what about the fish? Fish were not saved by men. That's a nice question. I don't know if to look that up. I like that question a lot. Thank you. So we have more to look up. What?
Who
What?
forbade them
Never a prohibition at time.
not to eat meat?
I continue from the beginning.
You did it?
The only prohibition after
So Cain.
So it could be it's just meat. It could be it's just meat. You already said? It could be it's just meat.
No, that's why.
That's but it over the mothers by the whole.
Could very well be. All right, guys, we're gonna stop over here. Thank you very much.
Meet
Thank you.